Well, hey, and welcome to another episode of Beatle Dustino, and you must be sick of those well hays, but welcome to another video. I'm still kind of on the roll of my 1,000 subscribers hit, and just amazed and dumbfounded. And there's been a video, I've long time in the process here, and I started it probably after my 500 subscribers. I was going to do it, and I filmed it, had it done, and it was just terrible. I got starting to edit it, and it was just, I was droning on about nothing, it seemed like, and it was just, every other word was I couldn't even edit them out. It was so much, and I just, I've only scrapped, I think, 2 videos, and that was one of them. Well, I've scrapped more, but that was due to technical issues, but that was one that got scrapped. So I thought, in the back of my mind, I've always said I'm going to do this for my 1,000 subscribers, which is basically, I'm kind of going to jokingly call it the Beatle Dustino origin story, or as the title suggests, from the Beach Boys to Boyz II Men to the Beatles to Jimi Hendrix and back to the Beatles. That's too long of a title. That'll be the subtitle, I guess. The true title is the Beatle Dustino origin story. So that's what the thumbnail will say. So you're probably already saying, hey, wait, no, the thumbnail said that. You just said that. Well, that's in the maybe the description down below. So there we go. Or as Larry Graves says, down below. And I could not even do that. Down below. All right, before I get too goofy and too whatever, and have to scrap this one too, I do want to thank all my subscribers, especially all those that got me to that 1,000 mark. Thank you guys so much. And let's push on to that next 1,000, I guess. And I thank you guys all. And, I never expected to get to 1,000. So I guess why do I expect it to get any further? I think this is amazing. I'm just going to keep riding the wave and see where it takes me, I guess. So that's the best way to put it there. But yeah, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. You want to help me get to maybe that next kind of milestone. There we go. And I really appreciate it. And just kind of crazy how big this can grow. Also, please give the video a like. It really does help out the channel. And do leave a comment. I love having a discussion with everybody. But let's get on with the origin story. So yeah, music has been a big part of my life for a long time. And, my parents grew up in the 60s, 70s. I would say they were right kind of smack in the middle, the kind of the late 60s, early 70s. But they really had a good backing, early on. They appreciated that earlier stuff too. So, there was an oldie station in our town, and I'm sure there was one in everybody's town, and unfortunately they've kind of died away, but that was what I grew up to listening in the car. Everywhere we went, that channel was on. It seemed to satisfy myself, my younger sisters, my parents. None of us complained. We all enjoyed the music, loved the music, and, my parents had their record collection too, and we'd spin some records every now and then, every so often. And one that I would request all the time, because I absolutely loved them, was the Beach Boys. And this is the very record here, Little Deuce Coupe, my parents' version of it. And I mean, this poor thing has got mold and jackets falling apart and everything, because it hasn't been necessarily taken the best care of over the years, because vinyl kind of, we always kept it, but it just kind of fell by the wayside in the household here. And now I've got it sleeved up and everything, and trying to preserve it the best I can to where it's at. But yeah, this very copy here really got me into them, and got me, I believe, into cars. I think that's why I love cars so much too. This whole album is talking about cars and how if you got a cool car, you're a cool guy. And yeah, well, I don't know if you're necessarily a cool guy, but I know I got a cool car. And what everybody else thinks, whatever, while I'm driving it, while I'm enjoying it, I feel like, yeah, and especially if I'm listening to the Beach Boys while I'm cruising down the road. I remember even, my mom worked for, my dad was in the Air Force. My mom worked for the base chapel as kind of a religious education coordinator, is what I know her title was at one point. Other points it got kind of turned into kind of more of a social type thing and that. But we would always hang out, go to brunch with, everybody, and a lot of times it was the chaplains and that. And I remember sitting talking to the priest, the Catholic chaplain, one time. He was all into the Beach Boys, and him talking about how cool it would be just driving down the road with your Corvette with the Beach Boys blaring. And he was kind of a cool guy, and I I've always kind of stuck with that, okay, this guy's all into the Beach Boys, loves Corvettes, wants to go cruising down the road, listening to the Beach Boys blaring out of his Corvette, and I've always kind of stuck with it. I don't have a Corvette. The motor in it is a Corvette motor. But yeah, that always just stuck with me. And, Beach Boys really kind of shaped me with my love of music and that, and my love of cars. And as, my listening on them got progressing, I'm really kind of sad. This has been in my parents' collection the whole time too. And I know I listened to it a couple of times when I was a kid, but it was so like, it was nowhere near those car songs and that, and surfing songs on the other Beach Boys albums and stuff. So it was just so strange to me. But nowadays, to me, this would be the album to put on. I would absolutely put this on in a heartbeat over these other ones I'm going to show. But yeah, this was there. I know I listened to it, but I never really appreciated it to the degree. Now, this one was one of the first albums I know I bought for myself. Not this particular copy. I found this just recently at my local record shop, still sealed. So I was really excited when I found that. And I know this album gets kind of knocked. It's an odd album, yes, I'll admit that. Of course, Kokomo came out. That was so big at that time. And, just the fact that this band from the 60s in the late 80s was relevant again, and on the top of the charts, and all the big movie scores and stuff. That was just so cool, so cool. And this album featured Kokomo on there, so to me that was awesome. And yes, I still love Kokomo. I think is it the best song? No. Is it overplayed? Quite possibly, yes. But do I love it? Absolutely, absolutely, I love it. And I love this album. There is so much fun on this album, and I had the cassette version of it that I bought with my own money. First probably album I bought with my own money. And I know I got a couple of little Beach Boy cassette compilations at that time too. And I played the heck out of Still Cruising to no end, to absolutely no end. I don't know how that tape is even working. I think I've still got it somewhere in my collection here. I've got to dig it out. I'm curious if it even will still play, because I played that thing so much. But yeah, I love the fact I found a vinyl copy of it, and just really made my day when I found this. And I absolutely love the fact I got this in my collection. I've still got the shrink wrap on it. I have opened it up, of course, yeah. But I was so excited to find this. That was kind of my early days of listening to music and that. And then you get talking with your friends at school and stuff, and you kind of get dabbling into kind of the current time in that. And I remember, of course, this is kind of the days of the cassettes. So, if somebody's got a cassette, they can borrow it to you. You go home, you record it onto a blank one, and you got your own version of it. And, you could probably even have a blank one with enough room. You could put about 3 albums on it, possibly. And I know I had a friend that she would always kind of feed me. I know a lot of it was New Edition and ABC. I know, and I'm going to have the albums kind of up there, just kind of showing. I'm not going to maybe talk about each one, but I'll just kind of, there was a Facebook thing that went out, I know, a few years back. And the top 5, I think you had to show one a day, an album that made your, who you are. And I always wanted to participate in it, but I never did. And this is kind of my version of that too, but really extended out. But I'm going to have those albums up there, and definitely more than 5. So those kind of albums really got me going. And I mean, completely different genre. We're kind of talking hip hop, soul, kind of stuff like that. Of course, MC Hammer was big then. I know he was one I was listening to. Vanilla Ice. I mean, everybody was listening to him. I was listening to him. I'm going to admit it. New Kids on the Block. I know I had a friend that was really into that, and he might be watching this too. I don't know. Hey, if you're out there, I think you know who you are. But anyways, he always listened to that. And, to me, it didn't seem odd. It was kind of just natural. And I think this is going to kind of take a sad turn here, because I got bullied so much for my choice of music at a certain point in my life. And I'm almost kind of afraid to listen to them again in a way because of that. And I've still got the albums, and I'm getting to it here. So, of course, it was Beach Boys to Boyz II Men to the Beatles to Jimi Hendrix, back to the Beatles. And so, of course, we are kind of talking about Boyz II Men now. And here is my original album, Motown Philly, Cooley High Harmony. Cooley High Harmony is the name of the album. I'm thinking Motown Philly is a big song off of it. And, I really got into this, and I really got into these guys. And see, I grew up on the bass. I think it was such a different environment there it was so more open to different genres of music, and that it wasn't odd, or a guy listening to what is considered girls listen to that. That's part of the bullying I got. These guys were awesome. And just recently I was talking to one of my supervisors at work, and she said that her uncles were huge into these guys, and that made my day, that hearing that a couple of guys were into it, and that was so cool. But I really love this album. I listen to this a lot. I know I've got a cassette version of it too, and this was my first CD I ever bought, as a matter of fact. Not only do I still have this CD, but it was the very first CD I ever bought. I bought this before I even had a CD player. My parents didn't have one. I didn't have one. I think I bought it as kind of a, hey, I've got a CD. I need a CD player to listen to it on now. And they did get me, I think that Christmas coming up there, they did get me a cool little personal stereo for my room. It was a true little stereo setup. I mean, it was cheap Walmart thing, but it had the separate speakers and everything, and yeah, it was cool. It had two cassette decks, the CD player. You could plug in a vinyl turntable there. It kind of got me started with the beginning of it there. And as it rolled, this is Boyz II Men 2, which kind of makes it sound like it's their second album. It's really their third album. They did have a Christmas album in between the two, that would be considered a studio album. And I've got a copy of that too, but it's in with my Christmas CDs, and I didn't dig it out. But yeah, this is the one that sparked that Beatles transition. At the time when this came out, I had moved to town now at this point, and here I'm listening to this, listening to the Christmas album, listening to this. I had seen Boyz II Men in concert. I won tickets to go see them in Bismarck. They were playing with Hammer at the time, not MC Hammer, just Hammer, on the Too Legit to Quit. There we go. I kind of got it. That tour. I got to go see them. TLC was also supposed to be there. I think it was Left Eye had got sick, so they didn't show up. The tickets I won off the radio, and I also won a meet and greet thing to go backstage to meet. It was supposed to be TLC. No TLC there, so we got to meet Boyz II Men. And right at the time when this happened, it was when End of the Road was really blowing up. That was the song that really made them. They'd had the 3 albums out, and they'd been big, but that made them just huge. As a matter of fact, that was the winning song. They were playing, if they played a Boyz II Men song on the radio, if you were the first caller to call in or something like that, you won the tickets. And I mean, I had it within just 2 notes or something. I'm like, oh, End of the Road, and I called up and I won the tickets. So that was a song that won me the tickets. And I think it was fairly new then, so maybe that was why I was the rabid fan, so I knew the song well. And maybe not everybody else caught on to it with that. But yeah, so I got to meet Boyz II Men. That was really cool. It was a really kind of a fun experience getting to do that. It's the one and only time I've been backstage, as a matter of fact, at a big concert like that. And it was kind of weird because I think we were in kind of the green room area or whatever, where the crew maybe had their dinner or whatever, and they must have had KFC, because there were buckets of KFC with chicken bones and everything still on the table. And we're sitting at these tables that somebody was clearly just eating dinner at, and they didn't even bust their table out. And we're sitting there with their old chicken scraps and that, waiting to meet Boyz II Men. And they finally came out, and you'd exit back out into the arena, and got to kind of shake their hands as you walked by. And we were maybe about, 10 deep into the line there. And I went with my mom. I couldn't drive at the time, so Mom had to drive me to Bismarck to go see them. My mom being my mom, she was in front of me. I was always a little shy. I was still a little shy, but yeah, I was always a little shy. So I just kind of was behind her, letting her kind of take the lead. And nobody else really said much to them. And I kind of, now looking back on it, I really kind of feel bad about that. But my mom being my mom, my mom's very outgoing, very talkative. That's probably where I get it from when I do get talking, when I get over the shyness. She walks up to them. I think it was Sean Stockman was the first one there. And she walked up and goes, "Hey, welcome to North Dakota." And I think she said it like that too. So maybe that's where I get the hey from. We're really getting the origin story going out here. But yeah, she walked up, said that, and they all 4 just lit up. Absolutely lit up. And I think at that point they were just kind of, yeah, hey, how's it going? And then Mom comes in and does it, hey, well, thank you. And it was, our little reception with them was a lot better because she lit them up like that. So, and I don't know if everybody else behind us got, maybe a little better. I think that was kind of fun. I get to share that story, that my mom really, brighten their day that day with that, welcome them to North Dakota. So, but yeah, I got to meet them, and I was all excited about that. And then, my friends at base thought that was the coolest thing. Now I get into town and I'm bullied about it. They won't end on it. I had bought a hat when I was at the concert. I would wear it to school, and people would see me. I'd have to hang it on my backpack during school, but and so people would see me with my hat, and you like those guys? You're not supposed to listen to that. And yes, there was the race aspect in there. Oh, you're white, you shouldn't listen to that. Well, why? That doesn't make any difference. It doesn't. It's just stupid that you got to bring that into it. Yeah. And why guys can't listen to it because this is music for girls, and who cares? Listen to what you want to listen to, and I am to that point. I don't care. It did lead me to the Beatles, and I appreciate that in a way. I don't like the fact I got bullied about it, and like the Beatles are my consolation prize but now the Beatles got that too when I think about it. They were kind of the boy band and that of their era, and only the girls listened to it. But I always say that on to their third album, there is the last track on there is Yesterday, and yes, that is the Beatles Yesterday, from the Lennon-McCartney track. And my parents would listen to this album with me, and they enjoyed it too because it brought them back to kind of the old Motown days. And I don't know if they just thought that because of the Motown label, the disc we're on, or what, but they always said, oh yeah, this feels like the old Motown days to me. So they always enjoyed Boyz II Men because of that. They would listen to that with me and would say, hey, that's a Beatles song. And I knew of the Beatles because, like I said, I listened to that oldie station, and they played the Beatles on there several times. And, I could probably sing Help with no problem because I knew it that well and stuff like that. So I knew the Beatles, but I didn't know the Beatles, if you get what I'm saying on that. And that kind of led me to, between that and this, and, okay, yeah, the Beatles are kind of cool, and I've always liked this older music, and I'd kind of got steered so far away from the Beach Boys in there too. And the kind of the funny on this, I do got to bring this one up. I know I'd had the Wayne's World soundtrack in there. Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen. That was, you couldn't walk away from it that time when that movie was hot. And I mean, that song was even on the top 40 radio again. It wasn't just on the oldie station or whatever it would have been on at that time. I don't know, were they playing 70s music much on the oldie station? I don't think they were yet. I think they were starting to dabble in a little 70s music at that time, but not too much. So I don't even know. It probably did get, once the song, hit big again, it probably got played on pretty much every radio station at that time. But that really kind of got me going, and with classic rock, and that album really helped me out. And also on there is Jimi Hendrix, as we're going to get to. And I know that's part of what sparked me into him too. The funny thing is, like I said, listening to Boyz II Men in town got me bullied. And I wouldn't say I really got bullied, but I kind of got shit for it, I guess. I was listening to the Wayne's World stuff when I was out at base yet, and I remember there was a class we were in one day, and he would let us play our music as we were working on projects or whatever. I put on the Wayne's World soundtrack one day. It was my turn to put on something. I had that with me. I put it on. I know my friend that borrowed me those other cassettes, the New Edition, ABC, stuff like that. She kind of was like, hey, why are you putting this white music on? I'm like, well, I'm white, and is it really white music? I mean, it's music's music. Everybody should appreciate whatever it is, whatever your race, there shouldn't be a division on it. And I don't know if that was the exact thing that she said, but it was just, maybe it was in fact, it was old music. That could have been it too. I can't remember what she said, but it was along that line. And I think maybe I'm thinking that because when I moved to town, oh, this is black music and you can't listen to that. I'm sorry. I don't want to get this like totally political, woke or anything like that, whatever you want to call it. So it's kind of funny how that went with that. Yeah, I got into, wanted to explore the Beatles from hearing Yesterday on the Boyz II Men 2 album and their version of it. And if you haven't heard that version, it's a cool a cappella version, so please check it out. It's really cool. As a matter of fact, I'll try to find a video and hopefully have it linked in the description down below so you can hear it if you haven't heard it. It's a cool version of it. They do it a cappella. It was kind of one thing they were known for, at least on these 2 albums. At least one of their songs was an a cappella song. Last track on side 1, their a cappella one on their first album here. And It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday is the name of that song. But it seemed like each of their albums, they at least did one a cappella thing like that, and it was really kind of cool. I wanted to explore the Beatles, and I got raiding my parents' collection. They had, on cassette, they had Abbey Road, Beatles 67 to 70, the Blue Album. So on cassette, I had a couple of good ones. I also had Abbey Road on LP. I know I really gravitated to this album right away when I got listening to it. And it was totally out of the era from yesterday. And that was my whole goal, was to hear the Beatles yesterday. And kind of in the right era when the album came out, but not on this album because it's all earlier stuff. They also had the early Beatles. This is their copy of it. Another compilation that they had, another Beatles album, was Hey Jude. So these were my true origins into the Beatles. So the Blue Album, Abbey Road, early Beatles, and Hey Jude. And luckily at that time I'd been working a little. I'd had a paper out when I was younger, and that was part of what got me money to get albums. I got working, my dad, when he retired from the Air Force, got working at a church in town, and as a custodian or a master of the janitorial arts, as we'll say. Throw a little clip in there, why not?
I myself am a master of the custodial arts, or a janitor if you want to be a dick about it. Anyway,
I came in and I'd work as a kind of a part-time assistant with him to kind of assist him on bigger nights than that after school. Got a little money in my pocket to buy some albums and stuff, and I would go buy Beatles albums. Every paycheck pretty much I'd go get a new album. And starting my collection, and I got to dig in here. I didn't pull them down. The first CD I got was Past Masters Volume 2. Just looking at that track listing, I was like, oh yeah, that looks like right up my alley. And like I said, I didn't know the Beatles, but I knew the Beatles. So like all these songs I knew, just didn't know them as good as, I do now, or even did, probably a month after I got this CD, because it's pretty much all I listened to at that point. Probably one of the next CDs of theirs I got, believe it or not, and it was brand new at the time. I know I probably got this the week it came out, and I know it came out right around the time of my birthday then, so I probably had a little birthday money, a little extra spending money, and I got, Live at the BBC. Looking back at it, I'm kind of surprised how much I fell in love with this, because I was so into Abbey Road right away. Right off the bat, that very kind of end of their career, and here getting some that was more the beginning of their career, and how much I fell in love with this. And I still absolutely cherish this album to this day. Live at the BBC, probably my favorite of like all the live and compilation albums of theirs, and a lot of it is just that sentimental aspect of it. And I remember how much I'd listen to this. I'd sit in the back of my parents' car, headphones on, just jamming out to it. I love their interaction with the radio host and that, and getting to know their personalities really through it. And I think that's part of what, got me so into the Beatles. And of course, as you all know, right soon after that, the next year, 1995, we got the anthology. And me learning the personalities, getting the anthology, added right onto that, right after Live at the BBC. And really getting to know the Beatles, not just their music, but them. And I think this is why I got to be so into them. I got so ushered in at a perfect time. A couple of big releases that really showed not just their musical talents, but their personalities. And probably one of the best rock documentaries out there is Anthology, just with how expansive it is and how big and how deep it goes into their career there and everything. And so getting to know all that, and right when I'm starting to learn them, and I don't know how many times I recorded off of A Beatles C, they called it.
It's the television event of a lifetime. The Beatles Anthology, November 19th, only on A Beatles C.
ABC Broadcasting Network here in the U.S. I recorded every night of it, because that's back in the day when you had VCRs and you'd record your shows on VHS. And I remember watching it as it happened live, and just afterwards, I swear even that first night, I probably rewatched the first episode at least once that first night. I know I watched those over and over and over again, just getting to know them. And my sister got me, not long after that, what the anthology kind of replaced, this copy of the Complete Beatles. She got this for me for Christmas one year. I know I watched the heck out of this too. It wasn't quite as good as the anthology, but it definitely helped out. I started to, throughout kind of the end of my high school career there, get into my early 20s, And I started to kind of shift a little on my musical journey. And kind of going back, I remembered Foxy Lady. I'm sorry, Foxy Lady on the Wayne's World soundtrack and how much I thought that was cool. And I forgot to pull it out, but my dad had a copy of Smash Hits, Jimi Hendrix Experience Smash Hits on vinyl. And I got listening to that a lot, kind of in that early adulthood of myself. And I really got into Hendrix, and I started to kind of, as my Beatles collection was pretty complete, then I think the only thing I was missing was Past Masters and Volume 1, and with the Beatles. For some reason, I never picked up. But I had pretty much everything else. I didn't have, on CD, I never got the Red and the Blue albums either. But just the main albums I'd had, on CD, I'd had pretty much everything. And I decided to start kind of shifting gears into another artist. It was Hendrix is who ended up being in that. And I remember, so that would have been the early 2000s. I was really focused on Hendrix. And I always say, if you watch my What's on the Rack, when I did my Hendrix section down here, I was right in at the time when Experience Hendrix was starting out. I think they started out late 90s, early 2000s when they started, when the Hendrix estate kind of took over his music, started re-releasing his albums, and started releasing live performances that hadn't been out, new compilations, stuff like that, new albums even. So I kind of rode the wave right perfect with that all coming out with that new product. And they would always usually release a nice DVD release with it too. I think that's part of what it is with Hendrix, why I got so into Hendrix too. I had that kind of, I got to meet the personality. I got to truly meet the musician. Between the live performances, his interaction with the crowds, a lot of his albums, of course, are kind of that because he's only got the 3 studio albums, the official studio albums. Or, well, not official. There is other studio albums, but post, after his death there. I kind of really got into him though because of that. And I love the fact I could get the DVDs, get to see him on film, get to see him talking about the music and how he made the music. And his engineer, Eddie Kramer, was always on those, and he was demixing them and everything. And really was so cool that I got to delve into somebody like that. And I think that's why I've got so into classic rock kind of. I notice most music I listen to, it's got to have a history to it. I've got to be able to go, so even like 90s artists that were prime at the time there, and I kind of ignored them at the time, and now I look back at it and I'm like, oh, they're so cool. I absolutely love this. But now I can also go find cool films on them about it and stuff like that, and get to know them too, and not just their music. And I think that to me is what's really great about great musicians, is if they've got that great personality outside of the studio, outside of the live stage. And the Beatles definitely got it. I think Hendrix definitely had it. Some other musicians, I'm sure, those are the big ones I'm into. And sadly, the Beach Boys, I never really reflected back on. That was more a childhood thing. And now as I've gotten older, I've started to reflect back on them a little more. I think just nostalgia and everything. And it's really kind of cool finding all their documentaries and stuff that are out there and exploring their later music. Like I said, with that Wild Honey, like I just didn't get it. And now it's like, oh man, this stuff is so cool. Absolutely cool. But, I got so into Hendrix for so long, and then it just kind of cycled back. And I noticed the artist I always went back to, without any question, was the Beatles. Every now and then I just have to listen to a Beatles album, usually Rubber Soul. I've always loved Rubber Soul. As a matter of fact, when I worked with my dad there at the church there, it was great because I could just have my Discman on, headphones on, be, vacuuming, cleaning up, whatever, and just listening to music as I was doing it. It'd be so much easier now with like an iPod or something, or your phone, I suppose. I'm still thinking that way back. I don't even think what I've currently got in my pocket, but just sitting and listening to, I know Rubber Soul and Help, I know got played a lot in that church as I was cleaning up. So I remember those were 2 I really gravitated to. And yeah, it just really kind of swung back, and it was right around the time of 2009 with the remasters coming out when I really swung back to them. I know coming up to that, I was so excited. The internet was, enough now that you had that out there to get that news so out there so quick. And that I remember seeing about it. I remember pre-ordering my copy, not like it is nowadays where you pre-order through Amazon or whatever and it just ships out. And that day, you pre-ordered it through, I at least did. I know you could have through Amazon, but I wasn't aware or using Amazon at the time. But even though I think we had a shipping thing right here in our town, but that's probably part of why, because I knew you had to pay taxes then. So, because we were in a town that had an Amazon shipping facility. So I pre-ordered it through Best Buy, though. It was to pick up at the store the day of. And I don't know, I've told the story before, but my copy got delayed or something, and I'm waiting on it. And I walked in one day just looking for something else, and sitting on the shelf is a copy of it. And I went up and I said, hey, I've got a pre-order of this set for this store 2 weeks back, and you've got a copy sitting on the shelf. Why wasn't I notified? And I had to go through quite a bit to get that, because they were like, well, that's not intended for you, it's intended for sale. And I'm like, well, I've already purchased it, and I'm sitting here in this town, and it's supposed to come to this store. Shouldn't it come to me first? And the manager got involved. I didn't go Karen level by any means, but I definitely got my way that day, because I was sick of waiting for it. But I was so excited, and at that time too, I had seen earlier that year. Yeah, it was earlier that year. I had seen Cirque du Soleil Love. So really, my love for the Beatles really got, and that was my very first video. Was talking about my going to Cirque du Soleil Love with my buddy, how into it he was, how into it I was, and how that really kind of led me back down the path to between Cirque du Soleil Love, seeing the show, and I loved that soundtrack when that came out. I remember buying that and just absolutely loving it. Whenever the new stuff came out, I was always picking it up. So Let It Be Naked, I remember just delving into that. I absolutely loved that. I got the Cirque du Soleil Love. One was the only thing I kind of skipped on. Again, my sister got me that for Christmas that year. So I had a copy of it, but I didn't get it right away. And I probably would have absolutely skipped it, because I'm like, I already got all this, so why do I need it? I don't know. It really swung back. The Beatles were very easy to get back into, and it's just been nonstop ever since 2009 for me. Really has been. I listen to other artists. Yes, I'll have kind of some albums up there of stuff I've been listening to lately, which kind of springs back to stuff I've been listening to since way back then. But I know one of the artists in there that I really got big into in the 2000s, 2010s, I guess. The Beatles to me are just, I said it in my thank you video to my 1,000 subscribers. They're just very loving. They're comforting. And that was, I think, why I'd always go back to it. I mean, music is so different, and from album to album, even on certain albums like White Album, I mean, there's so many different versions of music on there, genres, and that yeah, I don't know. It just kind of, there's something for everybody in it, and there's something for everybody at every moment and every time, and it's just, I just love them. I absolutely do. I don't see a turning back. I don't see another band surpassing them and taking them out. One thing I never got into until recently was their solo stuff, believe it or not. I was always so just taken in by the Beatles that I'd had a couple of their solo stuff. I know I had All the Best by Paul. I had a Tripping the Live Fantastic Highlight by Paul, and I listened to them, but I never got totally into it. And I had Double Fantasy and the John Lennon Collection by John. I had some of the Ringo Starr and the All-Star Band, Volume 1 and Volume 2. I had both of those. And like I said, I'd listened to them, but I just never got into it. And then it was Beatles Radio that really got me into their solo stuff. So it's kind of cool, the progression there on what got me so into it. And so, yeah, it's not until just recently that I've got listening to their solo stuff. And hearing some of the deeper album cuts on Beatles Radio, especially the early days of Beatles Radio, when they actually did play deeper cuts and not Let It Be and Hey Jude over and over and over again, was just blown away. Like Temporary Secretary, I remember the first time I heard that, I'm like, what the heck? This is the Beatles? This is Paul? Wow. And Mulligan Tire, how that one slipped by me too, I don't know. I can't totally credit when Beatles Radio came out, because I saw Paul McCartney live well before that, and I think that was what started getting me really dabbling into Paul, was when I got to see him live. And then I knew was out right at that time, and I got a copy of New, and I was surprised how much I loved New. And I started getting a couple of his other albums. I think that's when I started collecting the archive collections too, was right around then. I started getting all the albums, just the double disc at the time. I didn't get the big ones until recently. Just dabbling in it, like, let's hear what else he's got out there. Yeah, and that's what I'll credit it all to. So but I guess kind of bullying led me to the Beatles, listening to Boyz II Men. So there we go. the Beatle Dustino origin story. And I think I'm going to just leave it at that. I feel like this has went long enough. I'm sure some of this is going to get edited out, so we'll see how it turns out. I feel like it turned out a lot better than that last one I did. Yeah. So as the ums are flying now. Yeah, I am going to get signing out. And before I do want to thank all my subscribers and thanks to any new subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do hit the notification bell. Also, please give the video a like. Like I say, if you have stuck around to this point, you must like it. So give it a like. It really helps out the channel. And do leave a comment. I love having a discussion with everybody. Let me know kind of your origin story into the Beatles. What got you into them? I think everybody's path is going to be, especially us newer fans, is going to be so different. I think, OG fans, obviously, you were riding the wave of Beatlemania, and how fun was that to be right there at the beginning of it. Second gen fans, I think, you had some fun stuff in the 70s there and stuff, and their solo careers going on in the 70s. So that was kind of cool with you guys there. But yeah, there we go. I could totally get signing out there. I'm Beatle Dustino, signing out.